The U.S. Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation will come to order. We're having a full committee hearing today on the nominations for several positions, three very important nominations to the Department of Transportation. We welcome the nominees and their families, and we thank them for their willingness to serve. First, we'll consider the nomination of Rear Admiral Phillips to be Administrator of the Maritime Administration. Welcome to you and to your family. We are currently facing unprecedented challenges in the U.S. maritime industry, from concerns about reports of sexual assault at the Merchant Marine Academy to the need for investments in our port to ease congestion and the need for strong leadership at the helm of the Maritime Administration. Rear Admiral Phillips has significant experience in the U.S. Navy in many challenging situations, including Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm, as well as her capacity as Director of the Surface Warfare for the Chief of Naval Operations. After 31 years of naval service, she continues to serve as a special assistant to Virginia Governor Ralph Northam with a focus on coastal adaptation and protection. She has been a trailblazer across her career, the first female destroyer squadron commodore and the first female director of the surface warfare, and now the first female MARAD administrator. I look forward to seeing her confirmed as the next MARAD administrator. Next, we will consider the nomination of Dr. Stephen Cliff, welcome, to be the administrator of the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. Welcome to you and to your family, and thank you for your willingness to serve. Nitsa's mission is to save lives, to prevent injuries, reduce the number of accidents, and hopefully help us with economic impacts of those events. The bipartisan infrastructure law included new safety mandates that Nitsa will be required to implement, including automatic emergency braking, lane keep assist, and impaired driving detection technology. The law also includes historic funding levels for Nitsa's highway safety grants, which will help states and cities combat distracted and impaired driving and improve occupant protection and pedestrian safety. At a time when roadway fatalities are at the highest level since 2007, and as electric and automated vehicles are becoming a larger part of our economy, it has never been more important to have leadership at Nitsa that will take on these challenges. Dr. Cliff currently serves as Deputy Administrator at Nitsa. He brings to this role a very extensive scientific and regulatory background, in addition to working on research at the University of California, Davis. He has held various positions at the California Air Resource Board, including most recently as its Deputy Executive Officer. His work there included program oversight of regulation and working on program development with industry and other stakeholders. So I look forward to asking you some very important safety questions related to Nitsa. And finally, we will consider the nomination of John Putman to be the General Counsel of the Department of Transportation. The General Counsel for the Department of Transportation is the Chief Legal Officer of that department and serves as the legal advisor to the Secretary. The General Counsel also oversees the Office of Aviation Consumer Protection, and as we were talking before the hearing convened about yesterday's hearing and the needs to continue to focus on consumers' refund issues and the rules that DOT has on that, and working with us in Congress, very important issue to get consumers the refunds they deserve. Also, the responsibilities involve coordinating the department's legislative and regulatory efforts. Mr. Putman's nomination comes at a critical moment in light of the recently bipartisan infrastructure law, which provides an historic $567 billion to the department for various things in incorporating safety rulemaking. The Counsel's office will also be responsible to set up grant programs designed to strengthen our freight and port infrastructure, something that many members of this committee have great interest in. And as we've seen, problems in part of our supply chain can quickly cascade to impacts throughout our economy. The department has also jurisdiction over civil aviation. The committee has been heavily focused on aviation systems and making sure that they are not only safe, but the entire ecosystem is poised to grow coming out of the pandemic. Congress has given the department a lot of work in this respect in implementing the Aviation Manufacturing Jobs Program that myself and Senator Moran worked on mandating aviation safety rulemaking, and direction to make sure consumers are protected. Mr. Putman, I plan to ask you about the department's works to expedite FAA rulemaking and as part of the aviation safety law that we passed last year that Senator Wicker and I worked so diligently on, and our teams. Part of that rulemaking includes a safety management system requirement for manufacturers. And this is critically important and one of the key recommendations not only of our committee but of many other organizations around the world, that these safety management systems are critical for aviation. So, and also, as I mentioned, going to ask you about what we're doing about the backlog of consumer complaints filed against airlines for failures to refund during the pandemic. I'm also going to ask about what the department is going to do on pipeline safety. Just yesterday, a grand jury indicted Amplify Energy and 2 subsidiaries for negligent behavior in the aftermath of the October oil spill for Southern California. The indictment referenced multiple warnings that were allegedly ignored by Amplify Energy, including 8 different alarms for pipeline leak detection systems over a 13-hour period. Amplify failed, as the allegations say, to turn off the pipeline and immediately report the spill to the Coast Guard. This delayed response and cleanup of the oil spill may have resulted in an increase in potentially avoidable harm to our fragile coastal ecosystem. The spill was caused by a ship's anchor dragging a pipeline. The Department of Transportation and Coast Guard must improve the oversight of pipeline and anchorage locations, and we must assess the risk posed by existing pipelines near shipping channels and anchorages. This is why it's especially important to have leadership at the Department of Transportation, so I look forward to your confirmation and your leadership on these important issues. So thank all of you again for your willingness to serve, and now I turn to my colleague, Senator Wicker, the ranking member, for his opening statement.
Thank you very much. Senator Cantwell is correct. She and I have worked together closely on items such as the airline safety legislation and on these nominees. I know Secretary Buttigieg came to visit some of us in the Capitol just last week and asked that we get him a team confirmed and in place soon. So I do appreciate the chair calling this hearing today and seeking to move forward on these nominations. These positions are key leadership roles at DOT, making it all the more vital that this committee carefully assess each nominee's qualifications and plans for the department. Mr. Putnam is currently serving as Deputy General Counsel at DOT, and he's also served as Acting General Counsel. This experience has undoubtedly given him valuable overview of the duties of General Counsel. He has also worked for the state of Colorado and practiced transportation law in private practice. So I look forward to hearing how these professional credentials could benefit the American public. Dr. Cliff is the Deputy Administrator of Nitsa, having joined the department from the California Air Resources Board, where he was Deputy Executive Director. He also worked for the California Department of Transportation and as a professor at Cal Davis. I'm interested in hearing how these previous roles will inform his approach at Nitsa. His testimony today will allow him to articulate to the committee how he plans to improve safety for the traveling public. Rear Admiral Phillips is presently serving as the Special Assistant to Governor Northam for Coastal Adaptation and Protection. She has a distinguished career in the U.S. Navy for 30 years and retired with the rank of Rear Admiral in 2013. I'm interested to hear from her regarding her plans to carry out the critical duties of MARAD Administrator, which include oversight of the Merchant Marine Academy and its Sea-Year program, as the chair just mentioned, in addition to strategic efforts to grow the U.S. flag fleet. I will note that I am disappointed and a bit puzzled by MARAD's recent refusal to provide technical drafting assistance before my markup of the Improving Protections for Midshipmen Act, which is a bipartisan bit of legislation designed to address the sexual harassment and sexual assault problem that we have, and that the Academy is determined to address also. So it came as a surprise to me. If confirmed, I hope Admiral Phillips will work for a collaborative relationship and assist the legislative branch when that is possible. So I want to thank all of these nominees, thank the chair for expeditiously calling this hearing, and yield back.
Thank you, Senator Wicker. So Rear Admiral, we'll start with you. So we're asking each of you to give 5 minutes of testimony and submit anything longer for the record, and certainly welcome you if you would like to introduce your family or make any other additional statements. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chair Cantwell, Ranking Member Wicker, members of the committee, it's an honor to appear before you today as nominee for the position of Maritime Administrator. I want to thank President Biden and Secretary Buttigieg for nominating me to fill this role. It is both critical to our economic and our national security. I also would like to introduce my husband, Luis Baracario, Captain U.S. Navy retired, who is watching virtually, and my brother, Dr. Jonathan Phillips, who is here today. If I am honored enough to be confirmed, I pledge that I will work diligently to execute the duties and responsibilities of the Maritime Administrator and to support Secretary Buttigieg and the extraordinary team at the Department of Transportation and the Maritime Administration as we work to strengthen our merchant marine, continue to strengthen the resilience of our supply chains, and implement a historic investment in our maritime infrastructure. I am committed to working closely with the members of this committee and your colleagues to advance our nation's maritime transportation and infrastructure goals. I know from my experience on the staff of the Chief of Naval Operations the critical work of congressional committees and how hard you work to meet the needs of your constituents and communities. I also know how important it is to listen to and work with you on a broad range of stakeholders to find bipartisan solutions to the challenges we face. During my nearly 31-year career, I had the honor of holding command at sea 3 times, at the ship, destroyer squadron, and strike group levels. As Commander Expeditionary Strike Group 2, I worked closely with the military Sealift Command to ensure capacity and support for a host of related strategic response missions. As a result of my experiences in this and other assignments, I understand the critical role of our commercial merchant marine in providing the vital sealift on which our military relies. And I witnessed many of the challenges that confront our commercial fleet as well. Previously, I also served as Deputy Director and then Director of Surface Warfare Division in the Pentagon. I managed the annual fiscal year defense plan for the submission of the surface force, including ships, combat systems, weapons systems, and related training and infrastructure. I retired as a Rear Admiral in 2013. For the past 3 years, I have served as a Special Assistant to Governor Ralph Northam for Coastal Adaptation and Protection in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Under my leadership, we developed and delivered the Commonwealth's first Coastal Resilience Master Plan, which sets forth strategies to protect our most critical and vulnerable coastal infrastructure from sea level rise and coastal hazards. Throughout my career, safety has been at the forefront of my mission. The foundational priority for U.S. DOT will always be safety. Likewise, safety will be the North Star for the Maritime Administration, should I have the honor to be confirmed as Administrator. In addition, for the Maritime Administration, my priorities will be, first, promoting a strong merchant marine and continuing the recapitalization of the strategic sealift fleet and support for a competitive, safe, and modern maritime industry, capable of meeting strategic sealift support requirements and prepared to succeed in a contested environment. Second, continuing the work initiated by TOT and MARAD to address the many challenges at the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, including implementing measures to support a safe and inclusive learning and training environment on campus and at sea, where sexual assault and harassment are not tolerated. Further, advancing the ongoing efforts to address the Academy's many infrastructure challenges and strengthening MARAD's oversight of the Academy, supporting effective governance, and tackling the many other issues enumerated in the study recently released by the National Academy of Public Administration. Third, and finally, to support effective and speedy implementation of the grant programs authorized under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. As we continue to emerge from the pandemic, aided by the bipartisan infrastructure law, we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to improve our maritime systems, supply chains, infrastructure, and industry, and to ensure that it equitably serves all Americans and communities of all sizes. If confirmed, I look forward to working closely with you all to achieve these urgent goals. I am confident that my lifetime of service at sea, my experience commanding major U.S. and international maritime operations, my background managing fiscal resources and requirements development for the surface force, and my recent experience crafting equitable climate resilience and coastal adaptation and protection strategies for federal and maritime infrastructure in the Commonwealth of Virginia has prepared me to serve as Maritime Administrator. In closing, I thank the committee for the opportunity to appear before you today, and I welcome your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rear Admiral Phillips. Dr. Cliff, welcome to make your opening statement.
Thank you, Chair Cantwell, Ranking Member Wicker, and members of the committee. I am honored to appear before you today as the nominee for the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, known as Nitsa. I want to thank the President and Secretary Buttigieg for their trust in nominating me. I also want to thank my wife, Maureen, and our 2 adult children, Evelyn and Grayson, my folks, and all the rest of my family and friends who are watching online. I have spent my entire career as a public servant, first as a scientist at the University of California at Davis, and then for more than a decade in various roles, technical and leadership roles in the California government, where I champion sustainable transportation. Now, if I'm honored enough to be confirmed, I will draw upon those decades of experience to help make our transportation system safer for every American. Nitsa's mission of saving lives on our nation's roads is very personal for me, just as it is for too many Americans. While in high school, I rode in a caravan with a group of friends heading to a graduation gathering at the beach. One of the cars, driven by my best friend when changing lanes, crossed the median, flipped over, and collided with an oncoming car. Oleanders were the only median barriers at that time to protect against oncoming traffic. 3 of 4 occupants, including my best friend, were killed. My life was changed forever. This tragedy led my parents in my hometown to start a graduation night event to reduce tragedies like this. And while neither alcohol nor drugs played a role in the event I just described, these safe and sober graduation night parties have undoubtedly prevented many senseless deaths in the 33 years since that terrible day. Since February 2nd, 2021, I have served as Deputy Administrator of Nitsa, working with some of the most dedicated and professional public servants I've ever encountered. Nitsa is focused on making our vehicles safer for everyone while integrating policies that make transportation more safe, equitable, and environmentally sustainable, top priorities of this administration. Like the rest of the department, I am gravely concerned about the increase in traffic fatalities during the COVID-19 pandemic. Secretary Buttigieg rightfully called it a crisis. While many stopped driving in the early days of the pandemic, those who remained on the road were more likely to engage in risky behaviors. As a result, we've seen an unprecedented rise in roadway fatalities. I am committed to turning this around. We have much to learn about why some driving behaviors changed during the pandemic, how we can encourage people to make safer choices, and how to change a culture that accepts the loss of tens of thousands of people in roadway crashes as inevitable. We continue to work with safety stakeholders around the country to develop countermeasures, but more work needs to be done. A cultural change will take a transformational and collaborative approach to safety. Everyone, including those who design, operate, build, and use the road system, shares responsibility for road safety. By taking a safe systems approach, we commit to improving safety for all road users. A safe system approach incorporates the 5 E's: equity, engineering, education, enforcement, and emergency medical services. The monumental bipartisan infrastructure law will be central to these efforts. This historic legislation increases Nitsa's budget by 50%, the largest investment in motor vehicle and highway safety since Nitsa was established more than 50 years ago. This funding will improve our understanding of where and how crashes happen by improving data quality and expanding electronic reporting to move from paper-based data collection systems to digital systems. It will also broaden the crash investigation sampling system by increasing the number of data collection sites, including more crash types, and adding on-scene investigation protocols to enhance data collection in crashes involving vulnerable road users. These improvements will allow us to understand in real time the causes of crashes and help us address those causes. Nitsa is also responsible for setting the corporate average fuel economy standards, or CAFE. I am committed to making the transportation fleet as efficient as possible to save consumers billions of dollars at the pump, to improve the nation's energy security, and to protect the environment. We will focus on safe, equitable, and environmentally protective policies as we carry out our life-saving mission. If I have the honor of being confirmed as the administrator of Nitsa, I commit to continuing to work with members of this committee to improve roadway safety, foster innovation, advance transportation equity, and address climate change. Chair Cantwell, Ranking Member Wicker, and members of the committee, thank you for your consideration. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Cliff, and thank you for sharing that very personal story, painful story. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I'll bet you every member of the committee knows of an experience just like the one you described. And so thank your family for trying to also do something to establish something for young people. So thank you. Mr. Putnam, welcome. Thank you for your willingness to serve.
Thank you very much. Chair Cantwell, Ranking Member Wicker, and members of the committee, I'm humbled and honored to appear before you today as the nominee for General Counsel of the United States Department of Transportation. I'd like to begin by thanking the President and Secretary Buttigieg for the faith that they've placed in me. This opportunity to serve is the privilege of a lifetime. I'd also like to thank my wife, Kristen, and my wonderful children, parents, family, and friends who are watching remotely. Since January 20th, 2021, I've served as the Deputy General Counsel for the department. During those last 11 months, I've worked with and overseen the efforts of the approximately 500 dedicated and highly skilled department attorneys and staff addressing numerous transportation legal issues to improve safety, advance equity, strengthen our economy, address climate change, protect consumers, and foster innovation. Near term, the most significant challenge and opportunity that we face in the General Counsel's office is the implementation of the President's bipartisan infrastructure law, the once-in-a-generation law enacted through historic efforts by Congress last month. The bipartisan infrastructure law will repair and rebuild our nation's roads, bridges, and other infrastructure while focusing on economic opportunity, climate change mitigation, resilience, equity, and safety for all users. It makes the largest investments in public transit and rail passenger service in our history and improves transportation options for millions of Americans. It will also strengthen supply chains and enhance resilience by making necessary improvements in our ports, airports, rail, and highways. The law will help reduce carbon emissions, promote safety, and prepare our economy for new and innovative technologies. The investments will create many good-paying jobs across the country for years to come. However, historic legislation like the bipartisan infrastructure law must be matched with effective implementation that assures that its potential is achieved in a transparent, compliant, and accountable manner. The Office of General Counsel has a critical role to play in helping the department implement this landmark legislation. My experience with transportation law has prepared me well for this role. Prior to joining the administration, I worked most of my career as a transportation, environmental, and energy attorney in Denver, Colorado, and Washington, D.C. I've represented state departments of transportation, local governments, and private entities nationwide on a range of airport, highway, transit, energy, and other issues. Most recently, I served as the Director of Environmental Programs for the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. In my role as director, I coordinated closely with other state departments, local governments, residents, and businesses on Colorado's roadmap for transportation projects and greenhouse gases, rural prosperity, greenhouse gas reduction, electric vehicle deployment, environmental justice, and other programs. If I have the honor of being confirmed by this committee and the Senate, I vow to work with you to strengthen the department, maintain safety as its guiding priority, and achieve better results for the American people. I further commit to continue leading an office of the General Counsel that is responsive to congressional oversight, the needs of your constituents, and the deep transportation expertise shared by you and your staff. I view these guiding principles as vital to the achievement of our shared success. Chair Cantwell, Ranking Member Wicker, and members of this committee, thank you again for your consideration and for the opportunity to appear before you. I'd be pleased to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Putnam. I'm going to start with you, but just to tell all of you, we have lots of questions, so it may take us a second round, but appreciate everybody being here. The Department of Transportation had received 5,129 refund complaints, about airline issues of 2029, and you are looking at a spring of 2022 rulemaking. Are you going to clarify what significant delays are? This issue has come up about if a flight is delayed more than a significant, the next day. Are you going to help address that issue?
Thank you, Chair Cantwell. The rulemaking that's on the calendar for this spring is addressing the question of airline refunds, as well as addressing some of the definitions of unfair and deceptive practices. We're having conversations right now with the Aviation Consumer Protection Advisory Committee, the ACPAC, on that question of delays and how to define those significant delays and the characterization of those delays by the airline. So would anticipate that would be the subject of potentially future rulemaking based on whatever recommendations the ACPAC may have.
Thank you. And will Section 102 of the Aircraft Safety and Certification Accountability Act set a deadline for the FAA to issue a final rule on safety management systems? Will you work to meet this deadline and work with us and others on the implementation of this?
Thank you, Senator Cantwell. The answer is absolutely yes. It's a regulatory priority for me and for the department to ensure that we're able to extend safety management systems across aviation, but certainly covering aviation manufacturing.
Thank you. Dr. Cliff, what is your plan to address the regulatory backlog related to the mandates in the bipartisan infrastructure bill? There's 11 new vehicle safety rulemakings, including mandates for advanced safety technologies such as automatic emergency braking, lane keep assist, impairing monitor. But I already know that you're facing a big backlog. So how are you going to help us get these issues addressed?
Thank you, Chair Cantwell, for your question. Thankfully, the bipartisan infrastructure law provides a lot of additional resources for the department. As I mentioned, a 50% increase in our budget. There is a number of rulemakings, as you note, that have been mandated by previous surface transportation bills, and there is a serious backlog there, as well as a number of new mandates in the recent bipartisan infrastructure law. If confirmed, I will make it a priority to get rid of the backlog, as well as work with this committee to ensure that we're moving forward on the new mandates. In fact, as deputy, I've been working diligently with my team to address the backlog. And as you may have seen from the fall unified regulatory agenda, we have aggressive deadlines for those rulemakings. We're looking forward to using the new resources and appreciate your leadership on getting those resources to us to help address these needed rules.
Thank you. Rear Admiral, if confirmed, you will oversee the Merchant Marine Academy. You've heard a lot of the challenges that we are facing there. Report found that the Academy suffers from the staffing and leadership to solve some of these problems. If confirmed, are you willing to step in personally to restore and fix these issues at the Academy, including addressing this issue of sexual assault?
Thank you, Chair Cantwell, for your question. Yes, I am willing to step in personally to work to address the challenges at the Merchant Marine Academy, particularly starting with the challenges regarding sexual assault and sexual harassment. But also, I'm familiar with the outcomes and reporting from the NAPA report, and will work diligently with your staff and others, and also with the staff in the Maritime Administration and DOT who have worked diligently on these issues already to continue their hard work and to make significant progress for the Maritime Academy.
Including working with us on drafting legislation.
Yes, Chair. Yes, Chair Cantwell.
Thank you.
I will work with you on drafting legislation.
This is really important across every agency that we oversee, particularly when there is this element of safety and oversight. We have just got to get clear about where agencies are and where we are and what we can do to implement them. There's just so much change happening. We just have to be more in sync and working together. And if people don't support something, they can tell us. But we have to, but we have to get to a common ground on many of these issues. Do you support the Jones Act?
Yes, Chair Cantwell, I support the Jones Act. Thank you for
Okay,
the question.
thank you. And lastly, to you, back to you, Mr. Putman. I mentioned in my opening statement this issue on the California spill. Part of the issue is that, we have so much anchorage, so we just need additional safeguards in this system. Will you commit to reviewing the regulations in light of the California spill and implementing programs to help us have more oversight on on these responding to alarms and to this issue of too much anchorage around pipelines? If we basically have given exemptions to allowing ships to anchor there, and then there's just so much more traffic and congestion, we're putting ourselves at risk.
Thank you, Chair Cantwell. The answer is yes. We are reviewing the California incident as well as other incidents, and we'll continue that process, especially including the implementation of the Pipes Act of 2020.
Thank you. And beyond.
And beyond.
Thank you. Senator Wicker.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Dr. Cliff, the chair is correct. We have a lot that we need to get to. 94% of the fatalities in automobile deaths are as a result of human error. You agree with that statistic, do you not, Dr. Cliff?
I think behavioral circumstances are a factor in 94%. I wouldn't necessarily say it's human error in all cases, but it is a factor.
Okay. We're past the point of having to debate whether automated vehicles will provide much more safety for the American driving public. We're past that point, are we not?
Well, thank you, Ranking Member Wicker. It's a great question, and I believe, as Secretary Buttigieg has said, that automated driving systems offer the potential for much more safety as a result of the statistic that you mentioned, as well as offering the opportunity to drive down the cost of transportation and provide more environmental standards.
Okay, so it's at least a twofer there. Senator Thune and I wrote a letter in October raising concern about the apparent lack of agency action regarding autonomous vehicle technologies this year. Received a response last night, which I'd ask unanimous consent to insert into the record.
Without
at this
objection.
point. Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me ask you, Dr. Cliff, what actions will Nitsa take on with regard to AVs that my letter addressed? Can you outline for the committee actions Nitsa will take in, say, the next 6 months with regard to autonomous vehicles? And will the roadway safety strategy set to be released next month include policy on autonomous vehicles?
Thank you for the question, Ranking Member Wicker. Our approach to automated driving technologies is to optimize safety while also leaving room for innovation. Nothing in the Vehicle Safety Act gets in the way of the safe testing and piloting of these technologies. The approach that we're taking is to ensure that we have more data to help inform future actions. And in light of that, we, this summer, put forth a standing general order which requires the reporting of crash safety data to Nitsa. It's important that we have those data because in order for us to move forward on any sort of rulemaking, we need additional data and research to inform those actions. So the data that we're collecting as part of this standing general order is a first step in determining what further actions will be necessary.
So the answer would be because we haven't been able to collect the data quite as soon as we had hoped, we're going to have to wait on setting out our plan for the next 6 months to a year.
Thank you, Ranking Member Wicker. We have put out a rulemaking that establishes a framework for autonomous vehicles, and we collected a number of comments on those, and we're still reviewing those comments. So I think there's a number of actions that the department can take including research, the data collection efforts that I mentioned, and looking at the stakeholder comments on the framework that will help inform future actions.
This is going to save lives. I hope we can speed it along, and you want to be careful in it. I want you to be. Mr. Putnam, I voted for the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and it's got a lot of hard infrastructure in it and really not much more, contrary to some of the things we hear. But there is concern about the pace of federal permitting. The Department of Transportation has an opportunity to make a lot of investments. What steps will you take to improve and speed the permitting process? And do you agree that's a problem?
Thank you, Ranking Member Wicker. Certainly, ensuring rapid permitting will be critical to realizing the potential of the bipartisan infrastructure law. And so we are taking a number of steps. First and foremost, we'll be implementing the one federal decision provisions of that law that include a number of steps to streamline the permitting process. But we're looking beyond that point, the potential for new categorical exclusions, the potential for other process improvements so that we can speed along those approvals, focus on the ones that deserve the attention, and clear the way so that we can move non-impactful and lightly impactful projects.
Okay, Madam Chair, I think probably there'll be an opportunity for questions for the record. I want to thank you, Madam Chair, for underscoring what I said about MARAD and other agencies working with the legislative branch to help us get the legislation right. And also, I would say that it seems to me, having been at sea numerous times, Rear Admiral Phillips will be in a great position to understand what our midshipmen go through on the sea year, to make, and also to emphasize the importance of actually having that sea year. It's supposed to restart December 22nd, and we expect the leadership to go through with what they've told us there. But I think perhaps I'll have a chance to get back in and ask that question. But we have, to me, a resource who's been to sea, who perhaps has experienced what our young cadets are seeing now and is in a position to really help us get a grasp on how to stop these harassments and attacks. Thank you, Madam.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Senator Wicker. Thank you for those comments. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman. Thank you to our nominees. Congratulations. I'm going to actually just focus my questions with Dr. Cliff because I've long been involved in working on distracted driving way back to actually when Ray LaHood was the head of the Department of Transportation and took on this issue as one of his major focuses. And I think that's because we know it's really actually gotten worse. 8 people die and more than 1,000 are injured every day in crashes involving distracted driving. And earlier this year, I introduced a bill to create a grant program with Nitsa to encourage states to implement laws banning all non-navigational mobile device viewing while driving, such as streaming videos or video calls on cell phones. I have personally seen drivers doing this in my own state, driving by them, and there you see someone on a video call. And the bill was signed into law last month as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. Could you talk about how important it is to educate drivers and especially teens about the dangers of distracted driving and what more we need to do? I mean, there's carrots and there's sticks, but more needs to happen.
Thank you for the question, Senator Klobuchar. And I appreciate your leadership on this issue. As you probably know, more than 3,000 people die each year due to distraction, and that number is very likely underreported. That's because it's very difficult to determine distraction as a cause for roadway fatality. Nevertheless, we know that it's a really important issue, and we're committed to working on this. We appreciate the new resources that are in the bipartisan infrastructure law to help us do additional research on this. And we actually look at the states and local actions that can be taken to educate those in their states when distraction is a particular issue. So thankfully, about a 30% increase in the budget that goes to state highway safety offices will help in that education role that you mentioned.
Right, and I think you note how important that increase is going to be in your testimony. So one survey found that only about 21% of car owners consider car recalls to be a top priority. And the bipartisan infrastructure law included a bill that I introduced with Senators Markey and Blumenthal to direct Nitsa to study ways to incentivize vehicle owners to get their recalled cars repaired, as well as ways to make recall notices more accessible and easier. I've had my own experience with this, I'm sure everyone has, for consumers to understand. Could you talk about how we need to do better to get vehicles needed repairs?
Yes, thank you, Senator, for that question. Recalls are a great way to enhance safety before an issue actually occurs. If we know that there's a problem with a vehicle that needs to be addressed, then we want that vehicle to be fixed. And the bipartisan infrastructure law, as you mentioned, does have additional resources to help incentivize, in particular, departments of motor vehicles who have a relationship with the vehicle owner to get information out about recalls. And I will just note that for anyone who has a vehicle, there's an opportunity to check for recalls. You'll be surprised if you go to our website, put in your VIN number or download the Safer Car app, and it will inform you if there is a recall. So for anyone listening, I
didn't know that. It's helpful to know. Okay. Last subject, next generation 911. Senator Burr and I head up that caucus of 911, and one of our key focuses, and there have been many improvements for an updated 911 system, better operability and the like, interoperability. And the Senate reconciliation bill, the Build Back Better bill, includes $500 million for Nitsa to begin modernizing the 911 systems in a way that I think we really need. And I know this for NTIA, I'm sorry. Can you speak to the importance of upgrading 911 systems and your plans for coordinating with NTIA if confirmed?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. We do look forward to coordinating with NTIA should that bill pass. Next Gen 911 is a very critical element, I think, of our emergency medical services system. 2 out of 5 crash victims is alive when emergency medical responders get on scene. And so having better 911 systems to help coordinate with primary care is a real opportunity to improve outcomes for crash victims. And we definitely will work, if confirmed, with NTIA to provide any information that we have to make that program successful. Thank you.
Exactly. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. Next is Senator Fisher, then Senator Tester, then Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to our nominees for being here today. Dr. Cliff, on October 28th, Nitsa reported that in the first 6 months of 2021, traffic fatalities increased by over 18% from the same time last year. Nitsa went on to say that the estimated 20,160 deaths is the highest projected in the first half of a year since 2006. Based on your understanding, why are we seeing this concerning increase in highway fatalities?
Thank you, Senator, for your question. The contributing factors are the same as those that we saw pre-pandemic, but during the pandemic, we've seen that drivers are willing to take riskier actions. That is excessive speeding, impaired driving, both alcohol impaired and drug use, as well as being unbelted. More than 10,000 fatalities that are reported are those among individuals who were not wearing a seatbelt. So more education about the dangers of risky driving is going to be extremely important, as well as new technological improvements that will help reduce some of those trends that we see from the uptick in fatalities that you know.
In the bipartisan infrastructure bill that was passed, it provides Nitsa with $2.7 billion in new funding over the next 5 years. As you noted in your testimony, this is roughly a 50% increase from the FAST Act levels. How do you plan on using the new funding? And specifically, how do you plan on focusing it concerning this concerning spike we're seeing?
Thank you, Senator, for your question. About 2/3 of NHTSA's budget goes through to states for the state highway safety programs. So a large portion of that money will flow to the states in order to provide more opportunity for states to focus on issues that they determine are leading to traffic crashes. So that's one of our opportunities. We also have a huge increase in the research budget. That'll provide us more opportunity to do vehicle safety research as well as behavioral research. And then very importantly, the electronic data transfer and crash investigation sampling system will give us more real-time data and better information about what leads to crashes so that we can put forth interventions, policy interventions that help drive down those terrible outcomes.
Thank you. Admiral Phillips, how would you assess the overall state of the surge Sealift fleet? We had a conversation earlier, and I appreciated your comments on it, but how would you address that?
We did, Senator Fisher, and thank you very much for your question. As you pointed out in our earlier discussion, we talked about the need to maintain a strong and vibrant Sealift support system in support of our national infrastructure and in support of our national security. And we know from numerous studies that we are not there. And so should I have the honor to be confirmed, I look forward to working with you and with this committee and your staff and the many stakeholders involved in this, DOD, Transcom in particular, and others, to find ways to try to close those gaps and reach a satisfactory state of strategic Sealift in support of our national security missions.
Do you have any ideas how we can move quickly on that?
Well, thank you for that.
We also talk about government. It just takes forever to get things done, and it's hard to move at a pace that we need to really face and address the threats that are out there.
Thank you for that question and comment as well, Senator Fisher. As we discussed, it is challenging. However, it is my understanding that within the Maritime Administration right now, there is work underway to begin to recapitalize the Ready Reserve Force now that will begin to provide some modernization of that force, which we know is essential. And so near term, continuing and where possible, finding ways, and should I have the opportunity to be confirmed, I look forward to working on such things to accelerate those programs, is a critical first step to achieving what we know we need to accomplish our national security goals.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. Senator Tester.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Cliff, you pointed out in your opening statement what's gone on with fatalities around the country. Montana's no exception. You also talked about the fact that there's more dollars for you to work with to actually do some good things when it comes to addressing fatalities. Could you be somewhat specific in some of the things you're looking at where the greatest opportunity is for fatality reduction on our highways?
Thank you, Senator Tester, for that question. One of the issues, and you mentioned Montana, where rural fatalities are quite a challenge. We know that about 19% of the population is in rural communities, but about 45% of the fatalities are in rural communities. So one of the things that we find in our research is that those who are unbelted is one of the leading causes of fatalities in rural communities. So we have actually developed some campaigns directed at rural communities to get the word out about the need to use seatbelts, and that's an opportunity to very quickly drive down the numbers that you cite. As well, we have additional research into technologies that can help improve outcomes. The New Car Assessment Program is one of those where there's an opportunity to provide information to consumers about the safety of vehicles. And that's, I think there are new technologies as well that we can help implement.
I agree with the opportunity to educate in rural America. I mean, personal experience, we've all had these experiences. My son-in-law and grandson would have probably been killed if they hadn't been wearing seatbelts a few years back. But how do you what mode do you deliver that information in? Rural America is a little different puppy than urban areas, and getting that information out is often tough. So
yes, thank you for that question. So there's a couple of things. One, we actually do surveys and look at what sorts of messages connect most with rural drivers.
Okay.
And so we actually established and very recently put out a new advertising campaign. This is a TV ad that speaks directly to rural Americans about the need to use seatbelts.
So cell phones have been brought up several times here. In Washington, D.C., I live about 6 blocks from this building. And every once in a while, I actually drive here. And I'm going to tell you, in that 6 blocks, almost without exception, every morning, there's at least one person, and oftentimes more than I have fingers, that are talking on a cell phone, not paying attention to traffic lights, not paying attention to what's going on around them. We can study this issue, and we're probably all guilty of this at some point in time in our driving history too. I know I have been, but it's not acceptable. I think it's worse than drunk driving, quite frankly, and drunk driving is really bad. What are we going to do about this? I mean, I know there's a lot of local communities that have passed laws, but what can we do at the federal level? I mean, we can study the hell out of it. We know what the problem is.
Thank you for that question. I think there is a real opportunity to continue messaging about cell phone use and about distraction in general. As I noted earlier, it accounts for more than 3,000 fatalities each year, but we think that that's vastly underreported.
I would agree.
And I think there is much more opportunity for education, and we need to take much more of a safe systems approach. The issue is that people make mistakes, but that an individual makes a mistake should not lead to their death. So we need to be thinking more holistically about how to address safety, from the driver to the vehicle, to the technology in the vehicle, to the infrastructure.
Yeah. Well, I just hope that you're able to do something on those things. I mean, truthfully, I think we know what the problem is. I think real solutions on reducing death and actual physical action can help a lot. And I'm not big on putting restrictions on people, but on the other hand, we need to figure out how to fix this. I have really one question for Mr. Putnam, and we talked about rapid permitting with some of the previous questioners, and I think that timely permitting is going to be critically important on the bipartisan infrastructure package and others. How do you square rapid permitting with public input?
Thank you, Senator Tester, and I missed the very last part.
Okay, how do you square rapid permitting with public input on the projects?
And thank you for that question, Senator Tester. It's a great question. So very little of the process time usually involves actually getting input from the public. There's a lot of time leading up to it, a lot of time after that. And so I think part of it is really focusing on those elements, not in collecting the public input. It's vital that we get that public input early because that actually can help focus on actual issues and problems, solve those problems early so that you can get a project on the track to success, get a better project at the end of the day. It is a balance and will be one of the areas that we're looking at closely, but we're committed to getting that public input. It's essential, it's the law, but also leads to better process outcomes.
Thank you all. Madam Chair, I hope we can get these people out of committee quickly. I think they're good people, and hopefully we can get them to the floor and nobody holds them up so we can get these folks in their jobs. I think it's important. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tester. Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and congratulations to each of you on your nominations and for being there. Mr. Putnam, I want to come to you. We had a good hearing yesterday with our airline execs, and we had a little bit of conversation about spectrum. And I'm sure you've seen that the FAA had come up. They were voicing some last minute opposition to 5G deployment and creating problems that 39 countries have already deployed 5G. Nobody has had these, and these problems are concerns. And DOT does have some significant spectrum holdings. And that mid-band spectrum, we're going to need to, if it's not being used, if it is fallow, we need to get it back, we need to recoup it, we need to auction it and get it out there. So I would like to hear from you how you would see working with the NTIA and with the FCC to ensure that spectrum is going to move into the pipeline and get there for consumers, and that we are wisely managing the spectrum.
Thank you for your question, Senator Blackburn. Certainly, there is great economic value associated with providing additional spectrum, but at the same time, we need to ensure, as a Department of Transportation and certainly with the Federal Aviation Administration, that the provision of that spectrum is safe and that it does not interfere with critical safety systems like radio altimeters, which I know is a
Okay, well
subject.
then let me ask you this. What is it that the other 39 countries are doing where they've had no problem that we are not doing?
Senator Blackburn, it's a great question. Many of those countries have actually implemented controls on the level of power associated with the transmitters in those areas. They have geographic restrictions, relative to airports and other locations.
Do you think this is a solvable problem?
Senator Blackburn, I do believe it is a solvable problem, which is why the department and the Federal Aviation Administration are working with FCC, working with the communications providers and the aviation industry to try to address those, to craft those mitigations so that we can come up with a solution that works both for safety and for telecommunications.
Okay, so what kind of timeline do you see as being a workable timeline? Because no one else has had any of these problems. We are looking at the importance of 5G and that rollout, not only for security here in the country, but also we look at it as a competition issue when we talk about China. So I find it very interesting that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, come these reservations and these last minute concerns, which quite honestly are appearing, the more we hear about this and learn about it, they appear to be unfounded concerns.
Senator Blackburn, with regard to your original question in terms of timing, we're looking at this as a top priority of the department and the Federal Aviation Administration. And so really looking at weeks and months to craft those solutions given the decisions of the FCC. These were issues that were raised by FAA years in the past. And the sense from the department is that they had not been fully addressed. And so FAA did need to address those. They are real and significant concerns as identified by the aviation stakeholders yesterday.
Okay.
That being
Let me
said,
move on to Dr. Cliff, if I may. I'm about out of time, but Dr. Cliff, autonomous vehicles and the deployment of autonomous vehicles. I'd love to hear a couple of things from you about what you think are the steps we need to take to ensure safety in this near-term deployment of the AVs.
Thank you, Senator Blackburn. We really need to optimize safety as these technologies are being piloted and testing and research is occurring. One of the things that we have done recently is the Standing General Order, which requires reporting of critical safety data to Nitsa on a timely basis. So that tells us information about whether vehicles have any safety problems, whether there's defects that need to be addressed, and any other critical safety information. As well, we really haven't taken anything off the table, so we're trying to ensure that our current safety standards are maintained in place as innovation occurs. And so we want to optimize safety while we allow for that innovation.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. There were several people that I know, I'm not sure, we can't see who's logged, if anybody else is logged on. But anyway, Senator Hickenlooper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank all of you for your willingness to serve. Appreciate your wide diversity of careers. Mr. Putnam, obviously I'm always happy to have a Coloradan before us. You previously served as Director of Environmental Programs at the Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment. DOT recently released a climate action plan that ensures some of the infrastructure projects consider climate change impacts, incorporates adaptation resilience solutions. Describe how your prior experience with sustainability is going to help guide DOT's implementation within the bipartisan infrastructure bill.
Thank you, Senator Hickenlooper. It's good to see you again in DC as well as in Colorado. So in my previous experience, have worked on the development of projects, the approval of projects, and understand how the permitting process, the financing process for these projects work. And so understand how incorporation of sustainability principles can work their way into these projects, from the very beginning of design all the way through approval and implementation. Beyond that point, in my experience with the State Department of Public Health and Environment, coordinated on the development of a greenhouse gas roadmap for the state that included a number of specific elements, including transportation.
Great. Well, we look forward to seeing your work at DOT. Admiral Phillips, and I apologize for having the confusion in our meeting yesterday. In October, the Biden administration announced several supply chain actions, such as expanding the hours of operation at the Port of Los Angeles. The Maritime Administration is going to receive funding from the bipartisan infrastructure bill to the tune of $2.25 billion for the Port Infrastructure Development Program. How will the Maritime Administration use this funding to address the supply chain issues?
Well, Senator Hickenlooper, thank you for that question. And I'm honored to have an opportunity to speak with you today. In particular, as you're aware, I'm not yet in the building, but the program that is most effective in the context of addressing supply chain issues from the Maritime Administration's perspective will be the Port Infrastructure Development Program. This is already in existence. It has been very effective. However, through this generational opportunity with the bipartisan infrastructure law, we will be able to do a lot more with that particular program. And should I have the honor to be confirmed, I look forward to working on that. In particular, the program can focus on reducing greenhouse gas emissions, considering economic impacts and decarbonizing nodes across not only the maritime sector and ports, but across other stages of the infrastructure system. So MARAD's position here and participation will be long-term impact, again, based on what we could do with the PID program, and thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure law.
No, perfect. I agree completely on that, that it's going to be the long-term consequences of these investments that really matter. Dr. Cliff, let's switch a little bit. The bipartisan infrastructure bill includes an amendment that we put together that directs DOT to issue a report identifying barriers to researching marijuana. And obviously the report will help to develop federal marijuana impairment standards for drivers. When we first legalized recreational marijuana in Colorado, which I opposed in the beginning, I thought there would be all kinds of increases in teenage driving, teenage consumption, frequency of use. We haven't seen any of that. But we do recognize that we don't have a good way to measure the intoxication level. We use 5 nanograms of THC in the blood as a state standard. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration last issued a report on marijuana impaired driving in 2017. I guess my question is, if you're confirmed, are you willing to commit to working with this committee to develop a federal marijuana impaired driving standard so that we can have something as a national standard?
Thank you, Senator Hickenlooper. Absolutely, if I'm confirmed, I look forward to working with this committee on impaired driving and in particular, the marijuana issue that you mentioned.
Great, because it is one of those things that it's not going away, it's coming, and I think we need to address it and get out ahead of it as quickly as we can. Anyway, thank you. I'll yield back to the chair.
Thank you. Is Senator Young or Scott? If not, Senator Rosen?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that. Thank you to the witnesses for being here today. I want to start right in on adapting to innovative transportation technology, because Nevada is proud to be on the cutting edge of innovative transportation technologies. That includes hosting the only statewide drone test site authorized by the FAA. We participate in several autonomous vehicle and smart transportation pilot projects, and we're supporting electric vehicle infrastructure and deployment. We're also home to the Hyperloop One test bed and the Las Vegas Loop Tunnel. And just last month, Nuro, a self-driving delivery company, broke ground in a manufacturing facility in Las Vegas, and it's going to be building an innovative test track for its vehicles. Underlying all of our state's advancements and contributions to transportation technology is really a commitment to safety first and foremost, and with lead companies working towards using technology to make a positive impact on safety. So Dr. Cliff, can you share your thoughts as how under your leadership, NHTCA will continue to meet its mission to save lives, prevent injuries, reduce economic costs due to road crashes, while adapting and setting rules for the increasingly innovative transportation sector, one that uses autonomous vehicle technology with other forms of AI, and also, I would say, requires critical cybersecurity safeguards. And do you agree with Secretary Buttigieg, who recently stated he believes automated vehicles can make transportation safer, cleaner, more accessible, and more efficient?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. Absolutely, I agree with Secretary Buttigieg. He's my boss. I will say that I appreciate your leadership on this issue. And we have a number of tools that I've already mentioned to help us ensure safety as we encourage more innovation. I think there's a lot of opportunity here for technology to help us address the fatalities that we've seen increase on our roadways.
Well, thank you. And, you know, speaking of being on the roadways, and of course in Nevada, tourism tops our list of economic drivers. And so we want to support the traveling public. And so numerous members of this committee have heard me say many times, travel and tourism, lifeblood of Nevada's economy, and I would say most states in this nation. So it's therefore critical to our prosperity to make the air travel experience as enjoyable as possible, from the planning stages to actually stepping off the plane at the airport. So, Mr. Putman, as you know, the Office of General Counsel at the Department of Transportation is responsible for the Office of Aviation Consumer Protection, which responds to consumer complaints. It promotes awareness and understanding of consumer rights. And of course, this office serves a critical role in addressing concerns of the traveling public and really wants to help foster a more comfortable experience for those partaking in business and leisure travel. And we need to keep it safe and enjoyable. So, Mr. Putman, can you talk about how, if confirmed, you plan to manage your specific responsibilities in the aviation consumer protection space, and also tell us about some of your priorities for aviation consumer safety?
Thank you, Senator Rosen. And I can say that one of my longest standing clients was the Clark County Department of Aviation and the now Harry Reid International Airport. So certainly appreciate the central role that aviation plays in the economy of Las Vegas and Nevada. With regard to the aviation consumer protection role, it's been a major focus of my time as Deputy General Counsel right now, certainly addressing the concerns that we're hearing from the unprecedented wave of complaints related to recalls. So ensuring that we're addressing those complaints, ensuring that we're pushing through with the 18 active investigations we have related to the failure to pay recalls, looking at some of the rulemakings that I've discussed with Senator Chair Cantwell this morning, and ensuring that we're really looking forward to making sure that consumers have the right information and are protected correctly by the airlines. In addition, on the safety front, we're working with the Federal Aviation Administration to ensure that the safety-related rules are a top priority of the department and that we do everything we can to support those efforts.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I see my time's just about up, so I do have a question on clean vehicle jobs. I will submit those for the record. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Rosen. Thank you for your work on these issues. Senator Thune.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just start by talking a little bit about automated vehicles, or AVs, which I think are going to radically alter the way Americans move. And it'll be especially true for the elderly and persons with disabilities whose current transportation options are limited, especially in rural areas. It has the potential to greatly reduce the average of more than 40,000 traffic fatalities that we see on our nation's roadways each year. And while U.S. companies currently lead the world in AV technology, this advantage cannot be taken for granted. The U.S. regulatory framework has got to catch up with private sector innovation in order for these technologies to advance. There are tens of thousands of good-paying jobs and billions of dollars in investment that are at stake. AVs have the potential to transform the way Americans move, and the U.S. must lead the world in this transportation revolution. Dr. Cliff, I have worked over the past several years in a bipartisan fashion to enact automated vehicles legislation, which I believe is the key to ensuring AVs are tested and deployed under a safe and consistent regulatory framework, and I remain committed to advancing this critical emerging technology. AVs have the potential to dramatically reduce highway fatalities, as I mentioned, to relieve congestion and to provide a safe and accessible transportation option for the elderly and disabled. And I have been pleased to see Nitsa's recent actions to improve the testing and deployment of AVs through the granting, I should say, of exemption petitions and updates to relevant regulations. And I hope that the department will continue to build upon that important work. If confirmed, will you make modernizing motor vehicle safety standards for AVs, including commercial AVs, a priority for the department?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. If confirmed, I will continue our work on AVs, including the research and data gathering work that we've already got underway. Yes.
Do you see AVs as part of the solution to reducing traffic and pedestrian fatalities, and will you commit to pursuing a regulatory framework that encourages private sector innovation in AV technology?
Thank you, Senator. I do absolutely believe that AVs offer promise. We want to ensure that we're optimizing safety on the way to that full implementation of this technology.
Earlier this year, Nitsa issued a standing general order requiring manufacturers, suppliers, and operators of vehicles equipped with advanced driver assistance systems, or ADAS, as well as automated driving systems, or ADS, to report crash information to the agency within 24 hours of an identified incident. ADAS, which is developed to assist a human driver, and ADS, which is developed to operate a motor vehicle without a driver, are both beneficial, but they could not be more different. I'm concerned that combining data collection on both systems into one SGO creates a false perception that the technologies are similar, which could erode public confidence in AV technology and make future innovation in this space more difficult. Dr. Cliff, if confirmed, can you discuss actions that you would take at Nitsa to make a clear distinction between ADAS and ADS?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. You're absolutely correct that these are different technologies. I want to make clear that no vehicle that's available for purchase today is capable of driving itself. So there's nothing that can replace a fully attentive human driver in the vehicles that are available today. The standing general order that you mentioned does provide us critical crash safety data that is on a timely basis that will help inform our future actions. So I believe that using that tool, as well as our other federal motor vehicle safety standards tools to help drive forward this technology, is going to ensure that we have safety on the way to full implementation.
Well, in particular, what actionable steps would you take to develop a common nomenclature for ADAS and ADS terminology with the goal of trying to educate consumers and mitigating confusion that may lead to misuse or abuse of these systems?
Thank you, Senator. We certainly want the public to understand the capabilities of these systems and the limitations of the systems. So that's part of our educational work. In terms of terminology, we have adopted the SAE terminology, the levels of automation, and we make clear in our reporting frameworks that there's differences between these technologies in terms of the reporting requirements.
My time is about out, but with additional Nitsa funding that you've gotten from the infrastructure bill, could you describe what the agency is doing to understand the factors behind this increase and what countermeasures can be implemented immediately to address this issue, particularly from the perspective of enforcing traffic laws and curbing reckless driving? And I'm talking about the 40,000 people that die on the nation's roadways each year, and the alarming increase that we've seen in that.
Thank you, Senator, for that. You're correct. This is an alarming increase. Most of the money that we get as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law, 2/3 of our budget, flows through directly to states to address the issues that you're talking about. A data-driven approach in each state will help address the most dangerous behaviors, including enforcement. There's also a lot of opportunities with the new technology for rulemakings and the upgrade of the new car assessment program to provide more information to consumers about the safety of vehicles.
All right, my time's expired. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Thune. Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thank you all for your service, and thank you for being here today. I agree with you, Dr. Cliff, that optimizing safety is the key. I think all too often, autonomous driving advocates rely more on slogans than science. Unfortunately, it undermines the credibility of the entire system when there is over-promising, creating excessive expectations. And I had the opportunity to drive on the track in Connecticut, Consumer Reports track, which really just exacerbated a number of my concerns about the expectations that have been raised and the promises that have been made. Advanced driver assistance systems and automated driving systems have the potential to increase safety on the road, no question about it, but they need to be implemented with caution. And I have been deeply disappointed that Nitsa has relied on voluntary, unenforceable guidelines and programs instead of taking meaningful action. The AV Test Initiative in particular relies on companies to voluntarily share information about their autonomous driving tests. But when my staff checked yesterday, they saw data from only 32 companies, and there are more than 80 AV companies in the United States. This voluntary system ain't working. We need a mandatory reporting system. This summer's standing order to require companies to report crashes where advanced driver assistance systems and automated driving systems are engaged is only a first step. It simply doesn't go far enough. Nitsa needs to take regulatory action to implement basic standards for AV developers. I've been saying this point again and again and again, and I hope that you are hearing it from my colleagues as well as myself loud and clear today. You told me when we spoke that the standing order was needed so Nitsa could collect data on AV crashes and that you would use it to create justifiable, data-driven regulations. It's been more than 6 months now. When do you anticipate these rules will be ready?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. The standing general order that you mentioned that we discussed in our call the other day is providing us very useful data. We also hope to make those data public in the very near future. This information is going to be invaluable in determining the actions going forward.
But what's the timetable?
The standing general order is very new. We've only been getting data for about 4 months under that program. I think we're going to have to continue to look at the data and understand what's next. These are very new.
I really want a commitment. It doesn't have to be a precise date. Is it going to be 6 months? Is it going to be 6 years? your agency, sir, and this is not personal to you, is notorious for delayed rules. And we're talking here about life and death potential crashes. Can you give us a more precise timetable?
Thank you, Senator. I don't have a precise timetable at this time, but if confirmed, I commit to working on this issue expeditiously.
Let me ask you, one of these companies, Tesla, is under investigation right now. I think there are several investigations. Can you give us a timetable for completing those investigations?
Thank you, Senator. The investigations that you're talking about, we're working to complete. We work closely with the manufacturer to gather information, and we hope to have those investigations wrapped up soon. I do not have a precise timeline at this time, but if confirmed, I commit
3 months,
to getting through
6 months, 10 months, early in the new year. Can you give us a general time frame?
I can say in a typical investigation that it's usually several months before we take the next step in the action. We're gathering data now, and we'll determine what those next steps will be.
What do you think those next steps should be?
At this time, Senator, I don't have anything to offer in terms of the precise
Can you give
next
us
steps.
more transparency in some kind of written response to questions that I put to you about what you're finding?
Thank you, Senator. I look forward to those questions, and we would be glad to respond.
My time has expired, so I'm going to yield now, but I'm looking forward to getting something in writing that satisfies my expectations about precision and some sense of certainty about what timelines are. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Congratulations to each of the nominees. Welcome. Admiral Phillips, I want to follow up on the conversation you and I had yesterday. As you know, I have significant concerns over the Biden administration's ongoing attack on the energy industry and the negative impact it is already having on energy production in the state of Texas. In this case, I'm concerned also about how it could impact the application process for deep water ports licensing. As of November 15th, there are 5 pending applications under review through MARAD's Deep Port Licensing Program. 4 of those 5 are off of the coast of Texas: Blue Marlin, Blue Water, Gulf Link, and Seaport Oil Terminal. Together, these projects create thousands of jobs and billions of dollars in economic benefit. Once operational, these deepwater ports increase our energy export capabilities, establish greater energy security, and support the environment by displacing highly polluting foreign sources of energy. Even though the U.S. energy-related CO2 emissions have declined by 15% since 2007, and they continue to decline, President Biden and his appointees have been deeply hostile to any and all projects involved in the transport of oil or natural gas. I am concerned that the administration's approach will be extended to the deepwater projects that contribute to the state of Texas, to economic and energy security of the nation, and to the national security interest of the nation. Admiral Phillips, if confirmed, you will be in a position at MARAD to approve or to deny applications for port project licenses. Knowing the benefit that these projects bring to the U.S. economy and to our national security, if they meet the statutory requirements, should they be approved?
Senator Cruz, thank you for your question, and thank you for your time yesterday. I appreciate it. As you are aware, and I am not yet in the building, however, MARAD, under the Deepwater Ports Act of 1974, does review through a system jointly co-chaired by MARAD and the Coast Guard, a 9-step process to achieve a record of decision, which then, in theory, would allow a program to move forward, should the conditions of that record of decision be met. The Maritime Administration, as I understand, follows the law in that process and works through that 9-step process to achieve a record of decision, working with stakeholders, with applicants, and with a number of federal agencies. Should I have the honor to be confirmed, I commit to continuing a fair and equitable review of that process under the law to move processes forward to achieve a record of decision.
So you gave me the same answer yesterday in my office, that you would follow the law. And my question is, if these applications meet the legal and statutory requirements, should they be approved?
Senator, thank you for that question. Without being in the building and without having detailed knowledge of each of these applications and their outcomes, I can commit to you that we will review them fairly and equitably, and we will follow the law to complete
So you're
the
not
process.
willing to say if they meet the statutory requirements, they should be approved?
Should I have the honor to be confirmed and have actual sight of these applications and the outcomes and records of decision, then I
Yesterday,
can
you said
respond
you'd
to that
follow the
question.
statute. I'm asking if they meet the statutory requirements, should they be approved?
And I am committing to you that we will follow the law and we will review them fairly and equitably to achieve a decision.
Okay, that does not sound like a yes. Do you share the hostility to oil and gas that so many other Biden administration appointees do?
Senator, thank you for that question. I cannot answer the specifics of others.
Do you have a hostility to oil and gas?
The Maritime Administration will review applications.
I'm asking you
fairly.
personally, do you have a hostility to oil and gas projects?
Senator, I look forward to working with your staff in a
Okay,
bipartisan
so you're refusing to
way
answer that? This is a
determine
yes or no
outcomes to this
question. Do you have a hostility to oil and gas projects? This should be a pretty simple question.
Senator, I do not have a hostility to following the law and reviewing the process as defined in the law.
I didn't ask you that. I asked, do you have a hostility to oil and gas projects?
And Senator, I am thanking you for your question, and I am stating that I will follow the law fairly and equitably.
So you're
which means
refusing to
there will
answer
not
that
be a
question.
bias
That's highly
in the outcome.
disappointing that you're not even willing to say you don't have a hostility to those projects. That is deeply concerning.
Senator Cruz, I think she's saying that she's going to follow whatever the administration.
No, she's not. I'm asking if she has a hostility to oil and gas. It would be very easy. If you asked a witness, do you have a hostility to airplane manufacturing, and they refuse to answer that, I'd be willing to bet you'd be pretty upset at that.
Look, I think we just made a record investment in port infrastructure, and I believe in an export economy.
And the Biden administration is signaling out Texas and refusing to invest in Texas.
Well, I think she's saying she's going to get in there and see what the law requires. So
No,
I would
she's not.
Well, I'd like to move to Senator Markey if I could. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to, Dr. Cliff, put a focus right now on the issue of seatback safety. CBS put a spotlight on this problem, and I think it's important for us to get it done, put safety first once and for all. And inside of the infrastructure bill, there is a provision which I authored, working with Senator Blumenthal, to deal with the fact that there is an antiquated and ineffective standard for seatback integrity. The front seats of cars often collapse after a crash, sending these seats and their occupants careening into the back seat of the car, oftentimes with children in those back seats. These kids are essentially hit by a projectile, which is the front seat of a car, coming towards them, and tragically, these seats kill about 50 children a year in the United States and have been doing so for years. Unconscionably, the auto industry has refused to address this crisis for more than 50 years, despite having data from Nitsa showing that it could cost less than $5 per seat to fix the problem. Thankfully, we have now passed the legislation and sent over the authority to Nitsa to deal with this problem. Dr. Cliff, will you prioritize seatback safety and advance this rulemaking as quickly as possible?
Senator Markey, thank you for that question. Absolutely. If I'm confirmed, I will prioritize the leadership that you've provided in the bipartisan infrastructure law to advance rulemaking.
And you are aware of this danger of those seatbacks collapsing into children in the back seat?
Thank you, Senator. Our conversation yesterday was very illuminating, and I appreciated having the opportunity to talk about it with you.
So you will prioritize a rulemaking to protect against those seat backs hitting children in the back seat?
Yes, Senator. We look forward to prioritizing the instruction that's given to us in the law.
And there are 3 other provisions that Senator Klobuchar, Senator Blumenthal, and I authored as well that are in the infrastructure bill, as well as other safety protections which are backlogged at Nitsa. Will you pay increased attention to clearing out that backlog so that we do have safety protections which are put on the books in area after area where the Congress has legislated?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. Absolutely. The bipartisan infrastructure law gives us the resources we need to get through that backlog and address the rulemakings going forward.
Thank you, Dr. Cliff, very much. Right now, the Biden administration is considering new federal fuel economy standards, which would cut our energy use, save consumers money, and protect the climate and public health. The best option would increase fuel economy standards by 10% each model year between 2024 and 2026, achieving a total fleet average fuel economy of 51 miles per gallon by model year 2026. NHTSA's statutory authority requires standards to be set at the maximum feasible level, language that I worked to author, include, and pass in the 2007 energy bill. Dr. Cliff, NHTSA's concluded that the 10% year-over-year increase in fuel economy produces the largest net benefits through the year 2050 compared to other options, as well as would best return us to the fuel consumption trajectory exemplified by the 2012 standards, which the Obama administration used to set those high standards. Do you agree that this would exemplify the maximum part of the maximum feasible standards goal, which is being given to you and your agency to implement?
Thank you, Senator Markey, for that question. As you know, we put out this proposal in August, and we're now evaluating more than 67,000 comments that we received on it. We're analyzing those comments and doing additional modeling and look forward to finalizing this rule prior to April to determine what is maximum feasible.
And again, maximum feasible is, again, focused on feasibility. And if it is feasible, we should do it because we lost 4 years of the Trump administration. And we know that in looking at the options, which Nitsa is looking at, the middle option provides $100 billion worth of net benefits from 2021 to 2050, whereas the more ambitious 10% increase produces $131 billion in net benefits. So from my perspective, that's where we have to be as a nation. Otherwise, we won't get all the benefits, but we'll also be falling behind Germany, China, and other countries in the world. So it's imperative that we catch up. So I would only ask you, Doctor, that if confirmed as administrator, will you work with me to develop new maximum feasible fuel economy standards for model years after 2026, which will spur additional fuel economy improvements for passenger cars and light trucks?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. Absolutely. If confirmed, I'd be glad to work with you on that.
Yeah, and I do hope that you are confirmed. Your background has made you the perfect person for this job. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Markey, and thank you for bringing up CAFE, very important subject. Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Admiral Phillips, I want to thank you. I really enjoyed our discussion the other day. I want to thank you for your service. It's very impressive, your Navy service in particular, but your service to our country. I'm not going to beat a dead horse with what Senator Cruz mentioned, but look, there's clear to me that there's a split in this administration. Some people get that, becoming the world's energy superpower, producing more natural gas than anyone else in the world, more oil than anyone else in the world, more renewables. until recently, that's where we were. This is just, it's a good thing, right? And I'm not even going to question you. You're a military person, 30 years in, very sharp, very impressive. So it's just kind of a no-brainer. What's going on, there's a split in this administration. Certain people get this. By the way, if you increased exports of LNG to our partners in Asia in particular, significantly, there's studies that show that global greenhouse gas emissions would decline. So I think, Senator, I'm not going to dwell too much. I had no intention to, but this is a really important issue to me, too. It's actually important to any American. Right? Unilaterally disarming our energy sector just makes no sense. And the hostility from some quarters, not all, of the Biden administration on this just makes no sense. So I think the worry is if you go through that 9-step process, it looks good, the laws, and Gina McCarthy or John Kerry call you, say, hey, Admiral, shut it down, sorry. That's what I worry about, right? So you won't accept outside influence like that if you decide on your own merits that something like this meets the statute, would you? They're doing it. I just want to make sure you're someone who I don't think would succumb to that kind of pressure.
So, Senator, thank you for your question, and thank you for your time discussing the matters important to you in Alaska and others. I appreciate that. My response, of course, as you are aware, I am not in the building. I'm not yet in the building, so I do not have details on some things, certainly. And I think in the interest of following the law, which we've discussed, and going through a fair and equitable process within the boundaries of not only port infrastructure development, but also deep water ports, we have a real opportunity here in the country to improve and build resiliency in ports across the country in a bipartisan way to make change and improve our infrastructure in ways that we have not been able to do in the past.
Good.
So I will say that.
Okay.
And I look forward to working with you on that.
Great. Let me get back to, I mentioned in our meeting the Department of Defense. I actually had the Department of Defense commission a report on the assessment on the DoD strategic seaports. The two lowest rated ports of the 18 were the Port of Tacoma and the Port of Alaska. I know the chairman cares about this issue as well. But will you just recommit to me to work with me, and I'm sure Senator Cantwell's interested, on addressing this challenge? I know the DoD is interested as well. This is kind of a win-win on some two very important ports that actually work very closely together.
Yes, Senator. Should I have the honor to be confirmed, I do look forward and commit to working with you and your staff and with this committee more broadly, in particular to, as discussed, work on port infrastructure development nationwide. And of course, with consideration, thank you for forwarding the study that you forwarded to me yesterday. I did review it and look forward to working with other federal entities, DoD and others, to make progress in, again, building resilience and sustainability across America's port infrastructure.
Let me ask a question I didn't get to ask you yesterday, and it was just news. You and I weren't involved in this, but as you know, the Port of Anchorage has had this long-running lawsuit against MARAD on the port. The judge, the Federal Court of Claims judge, ruled the other day in favor of Anchorage. And, my own view has been we need to settle this and move on, right? I just want to get a commitment from you. There's going to be a damages award element of this. I have no idea if it's going to be $1 or several hundred million. But what I don't want is somehow that if it's a significant sum, that MARAD will say, oh well, Anchorage won that lawsuit, so we're not going to provide them any additional funds. That would actually be very unfair. Can I get a commitment from you on that?
Senator,
I don't want double dipping here, right? They've spent, well, you and I talked about it, a long time on this, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of legal fees. What I don't want is the Fed saying, oh, they won, they got an award, so we're not going to use any of the infrastructure dollars to help them. Would seem to be penalizing them.
Senator, thank you for your question. We have discussed this issue. I am aware of the lawsuit and of the very recent outcome. However, as I am not yet in the administration, I have no insight into any details, current or future, that may impact that particular outcome. What I can commit to you is that applicants to the PIDP program, the Port Infrastructure Development Program, will get a fair and equitable review of their application irrespective of who they are, so that we can move forward, again, to take advantage of this generational opportunity for America's port infrastructure.
Great, thank you. And Madam Chair, I have other questions for the other witnesses. I'll submit those for the record.
Thank you. Senator Peters, technically you're next, but Senator Lujan has been waiting for some time. Is it possible that he could, the two of you,
No, I'd be happy to defer.
as you, thank you. Senator Lujan.
I appreciate that, Chair Cantwell, and thank you, Senator Peters. Dr. Cliff, the mission of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has never been more important. According to the agency in 2020, the United States had a 7.2% increase in traffic fatalities, despite a 13.2% reduction in miles traveled. 2021 is even worse, with an additional 18.4% increase in deaths during the first 6 months of this year. Increases in alcohol and drug use while driving has had a terrible impact. Nitsa found that proportion of drivers with opioids in their system nearly doubled in March of 2020, while the number of drivers testing positive for marijuana rose by 50%. In your current role as Deputy Administrator, Congress gave you a mandate to save lives and prevent injuries. That is why I introduced the RIDE Act, or the Honoring a Boss Family Legacy to Terminate Drunk Driving Act. Congresswoman Dingell, Senator Scott, and Peters, and Capito, and I believe Nitsa needed to be pushed to do it better and get impaired drivers off the road. Fortunately, this committee, the Senate, and the President agreed. Now the HALT Act is federal law, and the President has nominated you to oversee implementation of the most important safety standard in over a decade. But the work is only just beginning, and this cannot be another rulemaking where Nitsa blows through the statutory deadlines. There are too many lives on the line. Every additional year means 10,000 preventable deaths and countless injuries. I'm grateful that just this week you said you're, quote, committed to expeditiously implementing the law's advanced impaired driving technology provision, close quote. Dr. Cliff, I would like a clear timeline. Yes or no, is Nitsa prepared to implement the federal motor vehicle safety standard established by the HALT Act within the 3 to 5 years required in Section 24220 of the IIJA?
Thank you for that question, Senator Lujan, and thank you for your leadership on this really important issue. Absolutely, yes.
This can't afford to wait, and I want to work with you to make sure Congress gets you the resources you need to implement this legislation within this deadline. Madam Chair, I also have a series of documents I asked to be submitted to the record. The first document is reporting by Hemmings Motor News titled General Motors Onboard Experimental Alcohol and Drug Impairment Detection Device of the 1970s. The second is from NBC News, dated January 2007, with an announcement from Toyota Motor Corp that they're developing a fail-safe system for cars that detect drunk driving and automatically shuts the vehicle down if sensors pick up signs of excessive alcohol consumption. The third document is a press release from Volvo, March 2019, stating that, quote, Volvo cars believe intoxication and distraction should be addressed by installing in-car cameras and other sensors that monitor the driver and allow the car to intervene if a clearly intoxicated or distracted driver does not respond to warning signals and is risking an accident involving serious injury and death. And finally, the fourth document is a report on test results performed in the 2021 Subaru Outback from European counterpart, Euro NCAP, which gave the model its highest rating and states that the car, quote, a system which monitors the driver's state of alertness directly by assessing eye movement and indirectly from steering inputs, which can provide indications of fatigued or impaired driving.
Without objection.
Dr. Cliff, auto manufacturers have been developing this technology for over 40 years. In November 2020, Nitsa even requested information on available or late-stage technology under development for impaired driving detection and mitigation. Dr. Cliff, based on your RFI, the car manufacturer's claims I mentioned, and cars already on the road, do you believe impaired driving technology using driver monitoring is best suited to meet the mandate under the HALT Act?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. I think that there are many promising technologies, including driver monitoring and the DADS technology that you mentioned, that can help move forward on this important issue. We're continuing our research, and thankfully, because of the resources provided in the bipartisan infrastructure law, we'll have an opportunity to really advance that technology development.
I appreciate that, sir. And Dr. Cliff, I want to tell you a different story as well about one of my constituents. 2015, 16-year-old Riley Eric Hine was driving to high school in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He was driving responsibly, under the speed limit, with his cell phone zipped in his backpack. Riley got into an accident with a semi-trailer, and his Civic was pinned underneath it and dragged a half mile until it burst into flames. Riley burned to death on his way to school that day. Underride crashes occur when an automobile collides with the side of a truck or a semi-trailer, and due to the height differential between the vehicles, collides partially or completely under the side of the semi-trailer. These crashes are extremely dangerous and often result in severe injuries and deaths, like in the case of Riley. The question that I have, Madam Chair, because my time's expired, I'll submit to the record, but it's going to be important to hear from you, Doctor, on what Nitsa will do with the research required in this legislation where Congress has already taken action. And the Hine family continues to share this story because they don't want other families to go through what they did. I want to commend you for the work that you're going to do. I look forward to your expeditious confirmation so we can get to work and get this done. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Lujan. Thank you very much. Senator Peters.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator Lujan, for your leadership on that legislation, which I was proud to co-sponsor with you. And I know the Abbas family, as you know, the Abbas family is a wonderful, amazing family in Michigan, and the tragic death of members of that family to a drunk driver on a nighttime drive back from Florida with the entire family, with a drunk driver on the wrong side of the highway, crashed into them and killed the entire family, 3 small children, a mother and a father. It was a horrific thing. I still vividly remember the funeral where the community turned out. It's clearly one of the saddest funerals I've ever been to see a beautiful young family die so tragically on that highway. So this legislation must get enacted. We've passed it. It's critically important that, Dr. Cliff, you focus on that we get it done. There are so many other families like the Abbas family that suffer similar tragedies, and thousands of people every day. So I hope you prioritize that. I will be working with Senator Lujan and many others who will be making sure that you do that. But I hope I have your commitment to make that a priority.
Thank you, Senator. You have my commitment.
Thank you. In addition to lives lost from drunk driving and other substances, we lose a lot of other lives on the highway. Nearly 38,000 people lost lives on our highways, and we know that most of those accidents, as you know, are from human error. And we have technology that's now being developed that can take the human error aspect out of driving and create incredible safety, particularly with autonomous vehicles. And that's the thing that excites me most about this technology, is that it literally will save tens of thousands of lives each and every year. But we need to fully develop this technology. Our auto companies are spending a considerable amount of resources to get there. But we need to have a legislative framework in place that allows that technology to move as quickly as possible. And I think when it comes to moving quickly, we know that roughly, it works out to roughly 100 people die on our highways every day. Every single day we can get this technology up and running saves a lot of people, and it is cumulative. So I know you've talked about autonomous vehicles. Some of my clients have raised, or some of my colleagues have raised questions related to autonomous vehicles, and I appreciate your support when we talked as well prior to this hearing. But in the spirit of making this a reality, will you commit to providing timely feedback and technical assistance on legislative efforts that I'm engaged in with a number of my colleagues here? We have to get this done. Could you tell me your commitment? Not just yes or no, how committed are you?
Thank you, Senator Peters. If confirmed, I'm committed. As I said in the conversation that we had, I look forward to working with you. I know you and your office have a lot of expertise on this issue.
Well, I'll appreciate that if confirmed. The other thing that I think is important, Dr. Cliff, is how Nitsa communicates with the public about these autonomous technologies in automation to help ensure that the discussion on autonomous vehicles kind of puts the safety record in context. And what I mean by that is that I'm always concerned that a single high-profile accident, which will happen as this technology is developed, can make this new technology seem unsafe to the public. But in reality, we know that cars driven by humans are going to prevent a much larger safety risk than these technologies as they continue to be developed. And so I think it's important not to unfairly prejudice public opinion as to the potential benefits of this life-saving technology. So how do you think Nitsa needs to communicate that to the public at large as this technology is developed?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. I agree with you that we want to avoid hyperbole. We want to ensure that we're putting into context the data that we collect and ensuring that as we put out information to the public that we're doing so in the best scientific fashion that we can. We're a data-driven agency. We're going to rely on those data to inform our future actions. We need to make sure that we're doing so in a straightforward and engineering scientific way.
Well, good. And as you move forward to help us move this technology, do you think there are any additional resources or barriers that you face in getting us to the place that we need to be? How can we be helpful here? How can Congress assist your efforts and the efforts of Nitsa to bring this technology to the forefront?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. If confirmed, I would be glad to continue to work with you and advance any ideas that we have that we believe might be barriers. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Peters, and thank you for your comments about the legislation and the family that was impacted.
Which one? School bus? Oh, no.
Very, very moving, and so thank you for your work on that and on AVs in general. We're going to Senator Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In 2018, a driver struck and killed 3 young students and severely injured a 4th student while they were boarding a school bus in Rochester, Indiana. In 2019, school bus drivers throughout Indiana documented every stop arm violation that occurred during one single day of the morning and afternoon routes. In one day, more than 2,500 stop arm violations occurred. That's why I introduced the Stop for School Buses Act with Senator Peters to address this problem. Our bipartisan legislation requires Nitsa to perform a comprehensive evaluation of methods to prevent the dangerous and illegal passing of school buses at loading zones. This important legislation was recently signed into law. Dr. Cliff, if confirmed, will you commit to swiftly implement this bill to help prevent dangerous and illegal passing of school buses?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. If confirmed, I look forward to moving forward on these provisions.
Thank you, Doctor. The United States is a leader in emerging transportation technology, and as a matter of national and economic security, we have to maintain that leadership edge as other countries work to erode America's competitive advantage. At the same time, there's an epidemic of roadway fatalities and injuries on our roadways. Nitsa reported an 18.4% increase in roadway fatalities in the first half of 2021. Tens of thousands of Americans lose their lives every year in motor vehicle crashes, and millions more are injured. The vast majority of these crashes are caused by human error, and autonomous vehicle technology removes human error from the equation. Since I joined the Senate 5 years ago, Senator Thune has been pushing the Sane Bipartisan AV START Act, a bill that passed this committee by voice vote in 2017. And yet we sit here today and that bill has gone nowhere because of the trial lawyers and politics being played by some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. Sadly, that means that once we finally do pass Senator Thune's great bipartisan AV START Act, and I believe we will soon, some members of this committee will have quite literally contributed to setting the United States back multiple years in the race against China and other nations. Dr. Cliff, while your testimony mentioned the increased traffic fatalities, I was disappointed that you made no mention of autonomous vehicles. Can you share your thoughts on the importance of supporting American innovation in roadway safety in the autonomous vehicle sector?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. At Nitsa, our role is to optimize safety as we allow for innovation. We believe that these new technologies hold great promise, as you indicate, and I think there's an opportunity for us to continue to advance innovation while ensuring safety along the way. At full maturity, the safety of technologies that you identify are unprecedented, but we can't forego the safety in the interim as we get to that full maturity.
So if confirmed, sir, what concrete steps will you take to promote the near-term deployment of self-driving vehicles?
Thank you, Senator. If confirmed, I look forward to continuing to ensure that we're providing the exemptions under the law and as directed by the FAST Act, as well as using the new research dollars provided under the bipartisan infrastructure law to advance our understanding of these technologies.
Thank you, sir. I'll look forward to working together on this and pushing the envelope to ensure that you're exploiting all legal and responsible opportunities to make sure we're able to deploy self-driving vehicles at our earliest opportunity. Thank you so much. I yield back.
Thank you, Senator Young. We did have Senator Scott, Senator Johnson, and Senator Sinema maybe joining us remotely. I don't know if they're out there. It's hard to see. We don't have anybody on camera now, but if there's somebody from those offices, now is the time to have them join. While we're waiting to see if we have a response from any of them, I want to ask one last question to you, Mr. Putnam, about the implementation of the bipartisan law. DOT is set to receive $567 billion over 5 years, an 80% increase from the FAST Act to help modernize every aspect of our transportation system. This includes a 221% increase in the capacity for things that will impact our supply chain and eliminate freight bottlenecks. For example, in the state of Washington, that would be things related to I-5, things related to the Port of Tacoma, which is a major export center for us, Highway 2, which there is a trestle, all are needed, are in needs of infrastructure investment, I should say. Dr. Cliff, these are also places, Highway 2 in the last 15 years had more than 60 people died on Highway 2, an average of 82,000 vehicles use that passageway every year. So as the Asia Pacific becomes a bigger destination for U.S. products, all the way through the Midwest, all the way to the coast, getting our infrastructure to help deal with the supply chain is critical. So how can we get the implementation of these programs? Can you talk about how DOT can help get this implemented as quickly as possible?
Thank you, Senator Cantwell, for that excellent question, and that is top of mind at the department right now. So at a very high level, the Secretary has directed the creation of an Executive Policy Council that's headed by the Deputy Secretary, staffed by the Undersecretary. I'm a member of that, along with all of the operating administrators or acting administrators. So at a very high level, it has our focus, but we're really taking a complete and thorough review from beginning to end of the process, making sure that we get guidance in place, make sure we get the appropriations tables out, our allocation tables out. Starting to work on common language on notices of funding opportunities so we can streamline that process, look at technical assistance for many of the applicants, rural, urban, freight, all across the country, tribal, so that we can make sure that we get good projects in the pipeline, that we get good applications in, look at the permitting process, look at the process of documenting those decisions, and then all the way through to actually implementing those projects, overseeing those projects, and closing them out. If confirmed, look forward to continuing my efforts to implement that process. Certainly there's a legal component, there are budget components, there are management components. Make sure we have the staff in place to do that. It's really a whole of department effort.
So you think these things, particularly in areas where we authorize things for the first time, mega projects, which is about moving major projects, many of them definitely related to our economic success as a nation and moving freight, at-grade crossings, another new program to help move product where congestion occurs, at many of our cities and towns as freight moves through them, and obviously the increase in the ports program. So all of these are big priorities in moving products. So do you think this is something that will be done early in January?
Thank you, Chair Cantwell. We've started the conversations about mega projects, as an example, about supply chain, recognizing the priorities associated with those, especially given the current challenges associated with supply chain. So they are top focus. We're bringing in additional staff and talent, as you've likely read in the news or with press releases, in order to make sure that we have really the best and the brightest on those problems. And try to focus on that as quickly as we can out of the gate.
Yeah. Well, I always say about us, ports are us when it comes to my state. So we're very excited about this level of investment just because we have seen the challenges. And again, we may be the throughput, but we see product from all over the United States, and we know that freight really can't wait. If it does, then we're going to lose competitively to other nations who've made major infrastructure investments as well. So anyway, glad that you've been able to give that detailed of an answer about the specifics the agency is going to be undertaking. That's why we want to get you over there as soon as possible so we can get all the legal aspect of this taken care of. Well, I don't see anybody else who's joining us on camera. We'd like to thank all of you for, again, being here. The senators will have until Tuesday, December 21st at noon to submit questions for the record to the committee. And you all will have 1 week to respond to those questions. So thank you again for your willingness to participate today, and that concludes our hearing.